Alright, so your probability of ending up in long-term care obviously increases as you get older. So as age advances, your likelihood of ending up in a care facility also becomes more likely. It's more likely to happen if you have a severe disorder like advanced Alzheimer's, advanced Parkinson's, the cerebrovascular type dementias, things like that. When you are put into a long-term care facility, you are likely to lose your support network. You will have less people around to talk to. You're going to be taken out of your own home and put somewhere that you don't have that much control over. It's, no one gets excited about having to go to live in a nursing home. It's like no one's dream that that's how they're going to end their life. So who ends up in long-term care varies a lot by socioeconomic status and ethnic group. So long-term care facilities currently are mostly filled with higher SES, older white people that can afford it and who don't have a culture where taking care of grandma and grandpa is something that you're supposed to do. So these long-term care facilities cost a lot of money, especially if you want to be in a nice one. Right? They can run anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 a month to stay in them. That's like an insane amount of money. So obviously you have to have a lot of money to begin with. Right? Like Medicare doesn't cover the nice facility to put Nana and Pop in. White people don't tend to have it in their culture, not really white people culture, but that, of course we would take care of grandma when she starts to have Alzheimer's. Of course she'll come and live with us. Like, that's not the thought. The thought is, hey, we got to find a place to shove grandma. People of ethnic minority groups, for the most part, tend to have more of a belief system that it is your responsibility to take care of your elders, and that's what's going to happen. So if you are of a non-white ethnic group, you're just more likely to take care of your older adults in your own home, or keep them in their home and you go and take care of them in their own home, as needed. Also, if you're poor, you can't afford to put, Nana and Pop in the good home. So, our only option is they stay with us. So, home care by family is an option. There is, different types of grants and things around in different states that can help you and pay you to help take care of your older adult people. There's also home care professionals who, come around and you can see the commercials on TV. I think one's called Visiting Angels, which seems kind of creepy. And they're there to kind of, come by, stop by, check and make sure, they have what they need. Are they taking their medication? If they need wound care, things like that. And then assisted living facilities aren't as kind of hardcore as a full-on skilled nursing facility. And with assisted living, you usually have your own little apartment. It doesn't have a full kitchen. It usually has a microwave and a sink and a refrigerator. And you still have kind of your own little place to live, but there's, skilled nursing people around to check up on you, and there's a main dining hall to go down to and things to do and people, but it's not as, hardcore as the full-on, here's your hospital room pretty much that you live in when you're in a full-on skilled nursing facility. And some assisted living facilities have a place where there is the assisted living and then what they call a continuing care retirement community, where you move from assisted living to the full nursing area, when that time comes. All right, Chapter 18, Emotional and Social Development in our 65-plussers. We are at Erikson's final stage, ego integrity versus despair. If we have integrity at the end of life, it means we feel whole, complete, and satisfied with our achievements. We look back at our life, we say, okay, here's all the stuff I did. I'm real happy with it. I did a good job. I lived a kind of an awesome life, and I'm proud of what I've done. We're serene, we're content, and it's associated with psychosocial maturity. I understand that I may have made some mistakes, but those mistakes made me a better person. And, overall, I had this one life and it was, I did well. That's ego integrity. Despair is feeling that decisions were wrong, but now we don't have the time to change it. Right? You look back at your life and you're just like, oh God, I didn't do anything I wanted to do. I should have done this, I should have done that, but now I'm 80 years old and I can't do these things. And I've made all these mistakes and I can't change them. And we become more bitter, we're unaccepting of death. People with ego integrity are like, yeah, I'm going to die, but that's going to be all right. People with despair are like, oh God, no. Like, I still need to, I don't know, climb a mountain or something. Sometimes it's expressed as anger and contempt for others, right? Like the old guy who's yelling at you to get off his lawn probably has some despair. Probably not so happy about some of the choices he made in life. The only thing he has control over now is who walks on his lawn. You don't want to be in despair. Now, obviously, if we go through all 8 stages of Erikson's, psychosocial, developmental theory, the more you've kind of tended to the right side, of having, mistrust and shame and guilt and inferiority and, identity diffusion and, isolation and stagnation. I think I got all of them. You're more likely to be in despair at the end of life. If you ended up on, the more positive, left-sided things, and have, trust and, I'm going to mess them up, autonomy and initiative and the next one that I can't think of right now, and identity and intimacy and generativity, then we're going to end up on the ego side of things, ego integrity side more, right? Because you have love and you've done great things and you know who you are and you feel good about your ability to do things and you have trust towards people. Like, all of that's going to make you have had a good life full of good integrity at the end. The other side is going to end up having you not, kind of be in despair. So even if you didn't have a great childhood and maybe you were more on the right side during childhood, you still have time to, flip that and say, okay, well, now I'm in control of my life and now I'm going to learn how to, have more autonomy and how to trust and how to do these things so that you don't end up on despair, right? You don't have a lot of say in it when you're a kid, but once you become an adult, you do have a say in who you are and who you become. And if you need to change, then you need to change, because you don't want to end up now at this point, 80 years old and in despair, when you did have time to change things. You did have time to make a difference and change who you were and make better decisions. All right, we can't blame how horrible our childhood was for the rest of our lives. We can acknowledge that it was bad and say, this sucked and I had horrible parents and horrible things happened, but I'm now going to acknowledge that I am now in control of my life and I can make better decisions and I can do good things and end up on that ego integrity side. All right, but it does take you acknowledging it and being able to change, and a lot of people just don't tend to do that. And so they do end up more in despair when they get to the end times of life. That was a real bummer, huh? Let's talk about personality in late adulthood. So your personality should be pretty good at this point. You've lived your whole life now, right? So it's more secure and our self-concept becomes more multifaceted. We kind of really understand ourselves well. We tend to be more self-confident, right? Older people just kind of say what they want to say because they're like, fuck it. We do continue to pursue our possible selves, right? Especially once we retire and we have, some time on our hands and we don't have to worry about money as much. We can say, you know what, there's all these things I kind of still want to do. I want to learn to paint. I want to go to China or somewhere. Yeah, go do that. Hopefully your 401k allows it. So we do see some shifts in characteristics, such as we become more agreeable and less sociable as we get older. So agreeableness is one of those big 5 personality factors. The big 5 don't tend to change much over time. Agreeableness is the only one that we see does shift a little bit in older adulthood, where you just don't tend to fight a whole lot about things as you get older because you're just like, whatever. Right? Like, hey, we're gonna, go to this place for Christmas, and you're just like, all right, whatever. Like, I'm just gonna kind of go with the flow. What's the point in really, fussing over stuff that doesn't really make a difference? less sociable, just in that, a lot of times older people just don't want all of the hubbub of, the big social scene anymore. Even if they're extroverted, they will still like being around people and doing things, but they may just not want to have, the big social gatherings as much anymore. You do have greater acceptance of change because you kind of realize that things change all the time and that's how life is. The more resilient you are, the better you're going to be, right? People who are able to kind of roll with the flow and accept the changes that happen to them are going to do better in older adulthood than the people who are kind of less resilient. Alright, so for psychological well-being when we're older, and pretty much any time, a lot of it comes down to control versus dependency. Older adults do not like having to be dependent on someone else. They don't like it if someone else has to cook for them, or clean for them, or pay for things for them, right? They want to have control over their life. They want to live in their own home. They want to cook their own food. They want to have control over, what they wear, where they go. Just like a 3-year-old does when they're trying to get their autonomy, right? Older adults, same thing. They don't want to be dependent on people. They want to feel like they have control over what's going on. Now, this is important to them, but it may not be something that is possible all the time. Right, like my Nana was, she was widowed for a long time. My grandpa died in like 1970, way before I was born, and she worked for a little while, but she didn't have a whole lot of money. And when she retired, she just had her Social Security, and that only paid her. I think her Social Security was like $720 a month, is what she made, and her medications alone cost her over $800. There's absolutely no way my Nana would have been able to stay in her own home if the family didn't help her out, right? But she didn't want anyone to help her out because she was a very proud Mexican woman who didn't want anyone to do anything for her. And so we would just kind of accidentally do things for her so that she could feel like everything was still under her control. So I would accidentally buy her groceries and bring them over to her house, and my parents would accidentally pay her property taxes, and my aunt would accidentally, pay all of the electric and water and garbage bills. And, even though my Nana, I'm sure, knew what was happening, it still gave her that ability to feel like she wasn't dependent on others and that she did have control over her life. And she was able to stay in her own house until she died. And that, was a lot better for her than having to live somewhere that wasn't her own. Another psychological well-being factor is health, right? If you're in bad health, you just tend to be sadder. Your well-being always goes down when your health starts to go down. Depression and poor health are very much linked, especially in older people. So we want to be really careful when older people start to have health go down that we are watching for depression in them and seeing if maybe they need to be treated for depression. Because again, like I said, it's really underdiagnosed in older people. And older people are a really large suicide risk, especially older males. So yeah, I do talk about that on the next slide. Different kind of negative life changes. The older you get, the more people they're going to die around you. Right? If you're a woman, you're more likely to be a widow, or a widower, no widows. If you're one of the youngest siblings, you'll probably live through your other siblings dying. Right? Watching, your parents die. It's a lot. It's a lot to go through. And unfortunately, if you live to be like 90 or 100, you may actually outlive your kids. And then you have to see your kids die, which is something no one should ever have to see. And those negative life changes are obviously going to take a hit to your psychological well-being. And, having good social support, which we've already talked about, right? Social support that we like and having interaction with other people. We don't want to isolate. We don't want to, have too much loneliness for older adults, because that not only isn't good for our psychological well-being, but it's not good for our physical being as well. So depression and suicide are really high in our older adults, and older adults have the highest risk of suicide. So physical illness and disabilities are really strong risk factors for depression and suicide, especially depression. Perceived negative physical health is really the big one. So there's always those older adults that have a lot of things wrong with them, but still think that they're like, superheroes. They're just like, yeah, whatever. And they've got like their walker, but they're also like, out there like at a protest or something. So they're not perceiving themselves as being in negative physical health. They're just like, whatever, things are going wrong, but I'm still kicking it and awesome. And then there's the older adults that have like one thing wrong with them and then never leave the house because they perceive themselves as being in more negative physical health, and that's more likely to lead to depression. The kind of richer you are, the higher your socioeconomic status is, we see that there is a stronger impairment-depression relationship. So rich people really don't like it when they start to get impaired because, oh my God, my life has stopped being super easy. Lower SES people who have had to like struggle with things their whole lives are kind of like, okay, here's another thing I'm dealing with, whatever, put it on the pile. So they're kind of are more resilient to it than the richer people are. Mental and physical health changes are related just across the board. Mental health can be a lot more debilitating, though, than a physical health thing, because mental health, if it's not great, we don't get out of bed. We don't go out and get the social support we need. We may not even go to the hospital to get, the help that we need because of depression or anxiety or other things that are going on. So the most people who commit suicide are people over the age of 75. And it's much more likely, like I said, to be males. We want to try to give autonomy as much as possible to our older adults, because once they start to lose control over their lives, they may start to think that the one thing they still have control over is their ability to be alive or not. And we really don't want their brain to go there. We do need a lot of increased mental health care options. Because there aren't a lot for older people, and they just don't seek it out as much as they should. So we need other people to also be aware of it to help get them the mental health care that they need. The most likely to commit suicide are males over the age of 75 who were widowers. Yeah, men are widowers. Mostly women are the ones who outlive their husbands. So when a man outlives his wife, his risk of suicide is very high. All older adults' risk of suicide is high when their partner dies. But when a man loses his spouse, his likelihood of suicide, especially if he's older, goes up significantly. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that women tend to take care of men, and because men's mental and physical health is greatly improved by marriage, once she's gone, those can kind of tank. Right? If the woman is the one that washed all the clothes and made all the meals and did all the shopping and made sure that the medications were filled and did all that, and all of a sudden he's like, how am I supposed to do all of this? I don't know what to do. I'm the 75-year-old guy. You may be like, well, there's no point to me even being here anymore. So you want to just, keep an eye out for grandma and grandpa, especially when one of them passes away, because the other one's not going to be doing so hot. And just, get them mental health care as needed when they need it.